Welcome to the Legalpreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Andrea Sager, founder and CEO of Legalpreneur Inc. As a serial entrepreneur and someone that works exclusively with small business owners legally protecting their business, I'm dedicated to covering common legal issues faced by business owners, providing you with the business knowledge you need to catapult your business's growth and showing you just how some of the world's most elite entrepreneurs have handled these legal and business issues themselves. In true attorney fashion, the information in this episode is not legal advice. This is for informational purposes only, and you should always consult with your attorney before implementing any of the information in the show. In case you missed it, our flash sale for Dream Bigger is now over. That crazy good deal that you'll never see again, it's gone. However, tickets are actually now 50% off. General, VIP, whatever you want, 50% off. Get them now because this event is going to sell out. I don't know when, however, it will sell out. We are so excited for this. We have Allie Webb, Danielle Canty, Pollyanna Reed, we have Chris Harder, Lori Harder, so many more big names that are going to be announced soon, so stay tuned. But for now, go get your ticket, 50% off, and get those rooms booked as well. I cannot wait to see you in Phoenix, October 5th through the 7th. Hello there. Welcome back to another episode of the Legalpreneur Podcast. I cannot wait for today's episode. We have Damon DeVito. He's an entrepreneur and an investor, and he's going to be talking with us about knowing whether your company is ready for investment, how to know if you are something that people want to invest in. How do you make your company that people want to invest in? So Damon, thanks so much for being here. I'm super excited to dive in.
Thanks for having me. Excited about it too.
Yeah, so go ahead. Give us your story. Tell us how you got to where you are today, because I know you have quite the story, quite the journey, and I know that listeners are going to be really excited to hear from you.
Yeah, well, I'm sure there's a boring podcast out there somewhere where they'd love to hear everybody's full bio, but I'll just hit the highlights. I was the son of an entrepreneur who, got there via pharmacy school, and so it was, small business, and then he kind of got it into a pretty good sized business. So had that in the family and in the blood, and always was entrepreneurial as a kid, but went to school, went into consulting. After that, went to business school. It was kind of a recession time, so it was a hard time to do interesting things. Age-wise, I'm a little before software, internet, and all that stuff. So coming out of school, now there's some really cool stuff you can do. But back before that, it was, there was a little less of that. So, but I did decide I wanted to be in business for myself soon after business school, and spent those 2 years going through kind of test case after test case after test case till I found one that might work. And then I took a job that was a test case for that. And then that gave me enough confidence and momentum to, raise a little bit of money to set up a shop and do that. And I've had that business, believe it or not, long time, 20 plus years, with a partner. But, then about, I guess 7-8 years ago, I got the itch to do some other stuff. So I started branching out just by helping kind of one team at first. It was a fluky story with my son seeking an internship, and I was at my reunion. I didn't realize my business school had an incubator, and basically in seeking a job for him, I found a bunch of startups that, could use some help, and over time, helped one that worked out well. And about the time I thought, oh, there's certain things I can help people with here in this stage, I wonder how I find another one, because the first one had, started to grow really fast and raise money, not all due to me, but, it wasn't not due to me either. Somebody pushed their chair over and said, hey, will you look at my deck? I'm trying to raise some money. I'm stuck. And I thought, oh, this is interesting that like these really smart people in this same room with all these other mentors are running up against this. Maybe this is where I should try to put my energy into helping people. And without confining myself into anything, one thing sort of led to another. Then I started teaching. Then I was officially a mentor, and then I was teaching, and then I became a Techstars mentor. And, if I think back from time to time about, how would I find a second venture that might want me to help? Now it's like I'm surrounded and I love it. Honestly, if I could not sleep and just talk to founders all day, I'd probably be every bit as healthy as if I got my 7 hours. I love it.
I love that. I love that. Okay, now can we touch on Techstars really quickly? So
Yeah, sure.
I have not mentioned too much on the podcast about accelerators, what they are. So can you briefly touch on exactly what an accelerator is and then touch on Techstars?
Yeah, sure. So real quickly, everybody there's a million things out there that call themselves an accelerator or an incubator, and also a million variations, a spectrum on how well they execute against whatever mission they adopt. But fundamentally, an incubator is kind of like I got an idea or I've got a business that I want to grow, and I kind of don't know. I don't know what the second question is. And so you get in there and it really sort of gives you a chance to kind of get out of the get crawling, right? Like just get forward motion a little bit. And that could be, you got one coffee shop, but people have been telling you your beans are good and you should have more than one coffee shop. And there's this cliff, right, that you feel like you have to jump off from small healthy business to something that's expected to grow a lot faster and maybe be a lot bigger. All kinds of new problems, right? And so it's that kind of a thing. You go in and they sort of give you a safe spot to try stuff, ask questions, get rolling. They've been around since the 50s. In 2006 ish, Paul Graham at Y Combinator and a few and other people and a few people, including Brad Feld at Techstars and David Brown and some other people out in Colorado, had a different version of the same idea, uh, both kind of like one sheet of paper ideas. So I don't think there was a pitch deck. I know there was no pitch deck involved in either one of these things. And, they basically said, look, if we combine a few ingredients, a little bit of guidance, a little bit of money, and a little bit of a cohort, maybe we can help some people like go faster than they would on their own. And it's go faster. It's accelerate, right? That's the idea. So sometimes you get something in Y Combinator or you get something in Techstars there's other premier programs, but those are probably the kind of the Harvard and Stanford by most definitions. And they're different in a couple ways, but they're similar in many ways. Fundamentally, you're risk reducing, right? Like if you're venture backed, you got a 90% chance of failing. If you're YC backed, they cut that in half, I think, or maybe not quite. Techstars, 86% of their historical worldwide cohort is still standing. I mean, that's a 14% failure rate. That's insane, right? If you could sort of let go of going public for a minute, which plenty of their portfolios companies do, and ask yourself, why is that? Are they so high profile? Why do they put out less money? And yet, why do they risk reduce and see the best teams a lot of the best teams in the world? And it's, they've got some front end filters that they look for because what makes a good investor? They've seen a million situations, they've seen a million data points. And so, they all of a sudden instinctively know you're a great founder, but you're going to run into this problem and you don't know it yet, right? It's like 3 years away and they can see it. And maybe it's 80% chance you'll run into it. But if you find good mentors or if you find people that have been through it before, their experience can help you navigate some of the landmines. Well, I mean, once you're seeing literally tens of thousands of applications a year of really good stuff from around the world, your pulse is good. You're still wrong. Things still go wrong, but your pulse is really good. And now once you start helping those people, if those people are grateful and those people have some commonality of a philosophy, then, they start helping the others. And all of a sudden you got people buying from each other and investors and mentors, become common. And Techstars' view is, hey, we can do this in any community where there's certain ingredients. YC says you can do this in any community where there's certain ingredients, but like we're in one place. We're going to play to we're going to be where the money is. And you don't have to do it that way, but that's just the way we're going to do it. And that's the ecosystem. Demo day is, if you did well in the program and you got to demo day, you should get yourself a good check if you need it. And that's a big way they de-risk the business, your business. Techstars, the demo day is real, but it's not the same kind of a thing. But, they've got it organized largely by industry. So, I mean, if you're in the I was out last week at Farm in Minneapolis. I live in Virginia. I was out at Minneapolis, and the Farm to Fork is, ag tech, food tech, all kinds of interesting stuff. I mean, there's 12 amazing teams. It's so energizing. And, but, they're going to see mentors who they're going to see a few generalists, but even them are going to have some contacts in that space. So you're going to see investors, and you're going to see, sponsors, and you're going to see people that are going to say, "Oh, you should talk to so and so over at General Mills." But then it's going to be like, "I'll text them tonight
Yeah,
and
it's
and
not like, oh,
connect
you
you."
should eventually.
Right,
Like,
right,
you will
right.
actually be talking to them.
So think of the acceleration there, right? So it's like, I dropped 10 introductions right afterwards. You're going to see at Techstars, you're going to have a one-on-one with 100 to 125 mentors in 3 weeks. They're all going to do the same. Some of them are going to invest, right? And so you're going to be drowning in introductions. And just the how much faster that helps you go. And most of the going faster, I think people who can't access resources are thinking, if only I had someone to give me a customer, if only I had someone who could bring me to the money. That's part of it. But part of it is you're going to make a lot of mistakes. You're wrong about a lot. Like all the big companies that have gone public, like look at the early plan. They're wrong about a bunch of stuff, just not everything. They started with a problem, and there's something there. And the quicker they can start getting in there and cracking eggs and figuring out what parts are the wrong, this is too hard. I don't want to do that. This customer doesn't want to be helped. The quicker you can sort through all that, the quicker you can find the right answer. And it's not random. And that's kind of, I would say that's the benefit of an accelerator. And then there might be one in your hometown who just says, we give out checks for 20 grand and we've got the industry leaders in town. Well, it's not fair to compare that against Y Combinator or Techstars, right? I mean, those are different checks, those are different levels, different ecosystems. But if that's the one you can access and it helps you go faster than you would have otherwise gone, as long as that 20,000 is a fair trade for whatever they ask, then you have to look at it through that lens. Some people are better off without, but a lot of people, it's nice to have people wanting you to
Right.
go faster.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I want to kind of shift gears to talk about actual investability. So the audience here, it's a lot of small business owners, a lot of service providers, e-commerce business. So really small business owners, and the conversation is turning more to investability. What makes me a company that makes me be somebody that wants to invest in me? So can you talk about what makes a company be attractive as to invest in? And if you can touch on making the transition from small business owner to startup, because that's the transition I'm in. And I knew it would be hard, but it's fucking hard. And not that I underestimated it, but now that I'm in it, it's like, damn, this is fucking hard.
Is your sense, you've talked to other entrepreneurs, is your sense that it's harder than if you had just gone full bore startup right off the bat?
I don't know. So I'll say I don't know, because we were talking beforehand, I consider myself lucky because most startup founders, they're not bringing in revenue. From day one going into startup mode, we were bringing in revenue. So, and I consider myself lucky in that realm, and because I can still pay myself from the law firm. So it's essentially somebody that's working a 9 to 5, they're moonlighting their startup. I am full-time in legalpreneur, but I still have revenue from the law firm that's able to pay me. So I'm very lucky in that realm. I don't know what would be easier. I have a feeling that this is easier because I have the revenue. I'm not worried about putting food on the table, and I'm not worried about getting my bills paid. However, it's hard.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting question because, the transition you're making, you can sleep because you have a little bit of a net. And yet, to the extent the net, not wanting to neglect the money source, um, to the extent you neglect growth for it, which is easy to do, then you'll grow less slow. You grow slower, and there's nothing wrong with slow or fast or any growth, but your questions are sort of related. The two questions about investability period versus this small business startup. Investability is about taking money from somebody else or time from yourself and it delivering some kind of a reward that makes that other person happy relative to the risk. So I have a very good friend and he doesn't invest in startups. And he doesn't understand why if you have a business that's profitable, you would ever sell it. Because that's his filter. And he's been super successful with it. And he does still sell some of these businesses, but he's always kind of grumpy. He's like, it was making money. He's like, yeah, I got a wire. And I'm like, cheer up, like buy me a drink. Why are you so down? But it's because he worked so hard to find that investment that he thought would be 20 years and it ends up being 5 and they get a crazy return. That's not what he wanted, right? He's laddering a portfolio of income. Well, so, but there's a certain risk associated with it. His don't go under, right? They don't pay off like a startup going public. They're not going to do 100 times what he puts in, but they're not going to go to zero very often because he knows how to filter them out. And with his filter, he almost never goes to zero. So he gets his 15 or 20% return and he's happy. And it's not usually more and it's not usually less. And so there's a match, right? Other people like a venture capitalist could not do those deals, right? They're real estate based. They're too solid. They have to go for the big return. They're supposed to be funding big ideas. And the reason, this sounds crazy to a lot of startup founders, like, why? Why don't you just invest in good things? And the reality is because, an investor, where the source of the money is coming from is often, pooled with very wealthy people or institutions that have money from a lot of people, wealthy and, people who have done well but aren't billionaires. And those people have said, okay, I need like a little bit here, a little bit here, a little bit here, a little bit here, and that's how I balance risk so I don't lose everything so that I can have college money, I can have fund money, and I can have growth money. And by the way, I got investors when I had a young startup and I want to bet on those people because people bet on me, whatever they want to do. But there's an allocation bucket. So then they don't go to some investor and say, Damon, go find me 10 of these, 10 of these, 10 of these, 10 of these. Because if you get back to your Y Combinator and Techstars scenario, how can I be really smart at all those areas? Because I only get really smart and I only get really good deal flow with some focus on something. And so if somebody's only looking for hotel deals and they're a hustler and they're good at meeting people, they'll probably see all of the good ones. But if you say, well, I'll look at anything, well, you'll probably see nothing. Like you'll only see flaky deals. And so when you're a founder, you got to go to the people that match what you're selling, in your investment. When you're seeking investment, you're selling your story. You got to match your story to someone who's buying that story. So lots of times people say no to you and it hurts. I mean, it hurts. They say no to you, but a lot of times it was really just like I couldn't, it doesn't really matter what you do. I can't invest in you. This isn't what I invest in. And as a founder, the quicker you can decipher that and get to that, the easier the fundraising process gets. And I think for most people, it never gets easy and it never gets fun. Some people are like really good at it and enjoy it. I'm probably one of those people, but I like it because it's the matching part, which is one of my skills. I love, if somebody says I want to invest in startups, my next statement is not great. I'll show you some. I see a lot. My next, I'm like 20 questions before I get to that. And they're all things that founders will sometimes be scared of, but I'm like, okay, well, like how many do you want? What kind of check do you want? What stage do you want? Any particular criteria? Is geography matter? Does industry matter? Do you want to be involved? Not involved, right? All of these things. And then somebody might say something in there where I'm like, okay, well, what you said no deals are going to filter for you, right? And then I can work with them on why that is, or they can think I'm nuts. Or they could say, look, I want to support Somebody recently they know I do a lot of work with women founders. I'm kind of on a little bit of a rampage because of some stuff. One of my women founders, somebody I taught, kind of opened my eyes to some stuff, and I got characteristically all pissed off and wanted to do something about it. And so, so then now I see a lot of really good women founders. It's probably why it probably made me more inclined to, kind of connect with you on Twitter when you had something interesting going on. I probably would have overlooked that before. But at this point, somebody came and said, look, I want to put money. I have this much money. I want to put it into 10 women founders. I still would have a bunch of questions, but the timing of it would be kind of the thing. And then it would be like, all right, if you're, serious and realistic about that, I'll keep you in mind as I see stuff. And bear in mind, I should say for your audience too, like I don't get anything out of that. I'm just helping founders and helping investors. And in the middle of that, good things happen, and I'm really happy about that. And plenty of good things happen for me too. So, but I'm not charging them or anything. I'm no investment broker. I'm not a lawyer, none of those things. And so, when it gets to this investability question, it's like, all right, well, the person giving money, they want more money back. And then there's some like, when, how much, what form, income, big payday. And so sometimes on the other end, sometimes people who are reluctant founders, which are like my favorite founders, and they're like, I don't know if I want to take their money. What if I lose it? I'll say to them, well, it's your job to try hard not to. It's their job to know, hey, if I write checks into 10 startups, a bunch of them, I'm going to lose it, right? Whereas if I write checks into a bunch of hotels, I shouldn't lose it, right? Those are different buckets of money. And if you came to this pond, sometimes when you bring your line in, there's going to be no bait and no fish. And that's not the founder's job to worry about it, but it's the founder's job to have a good match so that they don't get some other investor who thinks 100% of the time these startup checks turn into, an angel check turns into going public, and, who needs the lottery, right?
Right. And sense? I think one thing that's important for founders is to realize, like, not all money is good money, especially like you have to get, just like you were saying, the investor needs to be clear on what they want to invest in. The founders need to get really clear on what kind of money do you want. Like, you don't want so our round, essentially, it has turned into just an angel round, all angel investors. And I have had multiple conversations with each, and some of them, it's their first time investing in a startup. Mm-hmm. And I made sure every single one understands. I'm like, hey, I want to return you 100 times the amount you've invested, but you have to understand, like, you may never see a dime from this. And if you think that would ruin our relationship, like, I don't want your money. If you know that you will never see a dime, I do not want your money, because relationship capital is the most valuable capital in the world. And so I'd rather have that capital than your money.
Yeah.
And knowing what type of investors you want is really crucial, because I don't want somebody that wants to come in and run my business.
Right.
I want investors that have value to give, but I don't want them to come in and run my business.
Right.
And I think most founders are like that because this is their baby.
Yeah.
They're running the show, but you need to get very clear on that, because there are some investors that they think, oh, I'm giving them a check, I'm going to go in and do things my way. And another big one,
right?
Think
of your first legal assignment. You probably did a very competent, hardworking job, but in half the time, you could probably do a better job now.
Oh, yeah.
Because you have experience. And it's the same with angel investing, exactly. Right? I mean, my first angel investment was all the mistakes, right? Like, focused on the legal document that was in fact just standard, didn't pay attention to red flags about go-to-market and team, money with a friend, total focus on the upside, really wasn't planning to lose the check. And it's a real education. And I look back and I think, like, almost like that was a different person who wrote that check, right? Like, that's not at all how I think now. But very few people can get from point A to point Z without going through the alphabet. And I think that's where the experience kicks in.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I see it all the time. Like first time founders have a very low success rate, and that's just getting the practice in. I'm trying to beat that success rate, by the way.
When it comes
We'll
to
see if that
fundraising, so
happens.
let's touch on this. When it comes to fundraising, the hack is like rent some experience, right? I mean, these angels or mentors or accelerators, they got help. People got the reason there's so many mentors out there who are so generous. The reason I like to help is I got help, right? And now, now they can give back and participate and, watching you struggle and win, both of those are equally rewarding to them. They don't want you to struggle, but if you send them emails only when you're winning, eh, right? Like that's no good. Or if you ask advice and then disappear for a year, that's empty. But if you come to them and say, "Listen, did you ever have a day when like you just didn't want to do it anymore?" And they have a real conversation with you, and you touch back a week later and say, I feel 83% better because of our conversation. I just want to let you know, thank you. I mean, they do want a return on their money, but somebody who didn't put money in, or even if they did, they're going to feel so great about that, right? That's how they help you. And if you keep growing and growing, they get to a stage where they fade into the background, right? Like usually if somebody actually has me as an advisor, which is more of a compensated options role, I only do a little bit of it. I say no most of the time. But in that role, it's really kind of understood like there's a 2-year period where I'm pretty helpful. After that, for life, call me 24/7 if you need me, but you'll stop. Like you'll have other VCs will show up, you'll have other people that are more specialized, and you'll start to come to rely on them, and you should. I won't, the first time it happened, I was like, they don't love me anymore. But that I came to realize it's more like, when your kids move out, it's like, oh, I
Yeah, that's
succeeded at
true.
my job. Like they're
Yeah.
doing what they're
Can
meant
you
to do.
touch on angel
Mhm.
investors versus VCs? I haven't explained that here on the
Super
podcast, so I'd love to
simple,
get
my
your
money,
explanation.
other people's money, right? I'm making money managing somebody else's money, or I'm investing my money. That's pretty much it. Checks tend to be smaller, decisions made faster, no investment committee. For most founders, truthfully, angel or VC, probably 10 minutes in, they made a decision. Not 100%, but if it's a no, they made a decision 5, 6, 7 minutes in. So don't talk about the weather. Don't. If you send them the deck ahead, don't pitch the deck. Like get to it. They want to chat with you. If it's and the more experience, the faster they make the decisions. There's always some follow up, but that's kind of the thing. With a VC, a lot of times they have to go back and talk to the other people, their other partners and stuff, but they're investing other people's money and they're making some money doing that. They're getting a management fee, and they're also going to participate in the upside, and that's commonly called carry. Not all that important to know all the mechanics, but it is important to know the motivations of what's behind it. Many times they've told investors, their own investors, which are called limited partners, uh, I will invest in this, I won't invest in this. Might be sectors, might be situational, all kinds of stuff. And so, and that may affect you. And then also, they may not have any money. Somebody might have like $100 million fund, and they might be raising a $200 million fund, and you might show up on the day they don't have any money, and you're thinking like, I only need a couple million. How can you not have it? But it's because they allocated everything out of the first fund and they haven't taken in the first close of the second fund. And for these reasons, it's kind of like the questions I said I ask when somebody says I want to invest. You talk about you implied, I think, with your know who you want to invest with is also, you get to ask questions. Even if there's only one person that wants to invest in you, it's a sign of respect, not disrespect, to say, where are you in your fund cycle? How do I fit with your other investments? What was your last check? Like right now, a lot of VCs are not really investing in new deals. But if you're a VC, if you're a venture capitalist and you say that, you become irrelevant. So nobody says that. It's not that they're dishonest people. It's just this structural problem in a down cycle where they have to pretend they're business as usual, but they're not. And so, you have to think, how do I diligence that, right? And you could say, well, tell me about the last 3 checks you wrote. Not in a disrespectful way, just they might say they were 3 people just like you in different businesses. I'm proud to tell you about them. And they tell you the amounts. You can ask them how long it took, and you might fall in love with this investor and say, I want to be number 4. Or they might say, well, we haven't done anything since December, but we're looking at a lot of stuff and it's just been busy. Well, they're quietly telling you you're not going to get a check and it has nothing to do with you. And that's good due diligence on your part. Now you can put your energy elsewhere and not grind each other up. I didn't answer your small business question. It's growth. It's growth and ceiling. So startup speed, if you're going to seek money from other people like angels and venture, 20% month over month minimum early. So if you've got a super profitable coffee shop or legal practice or whatever, you're probably not growing 20% month over month. So you're not going to venture capitalists or angel investors unless you intend to go at that pace, because that's how they're wired. So it doesn't mean you can't go public, right? You just have to think, how fast am I comfortably growing? Am I comfortable with growing without ruining my operation? And find the appropriate money. The tool that a lot of brick and mortar businesses or cash flowing businesses overlook are customers, debt, like from banks and things like that. And, a lot of times you can grow and own 100% of your business. You might grow a little slower, and one of your Silicon Valley friends or Y Combinator friends might talk to you less at a party, but they're going to go public and own this much of their company, a little bit of their company, and you're going to do whatever you want to do with your company and own 100%. And one's no more viable than the other. They're both, you build something cool, you have a decent mental health, good employees, proud of what you do, and make some money. I mean, those are both wins in my book.
I do want to touch on the legal stuff, because you've been on every side of this, the entrepreneur, the investor. I would love to hear from your perspective. What do entrepreneurs or founders, small business owners, what do you see them focusing on too early when it comes to the legal stuff? Because clearly there are things that need to get taken care of, but there are things that can wait. I am very interested in your perspective on
I'm
this.
guessing I'll say things that will make me your straight man here, or you've said before, but because it's common, right? People with a new idea overweight the idea. So the idea tends to be not worth much, and it tends to change. So if
and it holds them back. Like sorry, I just wanted to say this. I hear from people all the time. I don't want to launch because I don't want people to steal my idea. And I nicely have to tell them, like, nobody is concerned with you. Like, in the nicest way possible, right now you're nobody. Like, I hope this becomes the next big thing, but right now you're nobody. And it is better to prove that instead of
so it's interesting. I mean, every once in a while, first of all, there's always bullies, and you should be careful, right? So I won't, in the old days, I don't think well, anyway, I won't name names, but it's pretty common that there are certain companies that like to do things themselves, and they don't work with outsiders. And if you walk in and say, I invented this new thing, and you don't have intellectual property, they will steal it. And even if you do, they may steal it because they have billions of dollars and tons of lawyers, and who are you? It's worth it to just take the risk. And that's just their business. Fortunately, if you ask 3 questions of people that should know, they know. And so I would avoid those people. The person sitting next to you, if you're a student in a class somewhere, if you tell 5 of your friends your idea and you're all going into the same prototyping or venture class, one of them's going to steal it. They're not going to do anything with it. I've never seen the copycat last more than 3 months with it. But I've uncomfortably had to, the class I teach, I'm an adjunct, I have to turn away about half the applicants. It's which I don't love, but I also am proud of. And I turn away the copycats. They're easy for me to tell. It's like, well, this person's doing stuff. This person's talking about doing stuff. But they're talking about exactly the same thing, and they give exactly the same origin story. So they can fool contest judges. It can really drive you crazy, but it won't go far. It won't last long. So anyway, that caveat aside, yeah, people rush out and copyright. Well, I'll use all the wrong words, but they copyright things and trademark things and trademark logos. And, if you're General Mills, who cares? Another $5,000, trademark everything. But if you're little, don't spend money on stuff like that. It's going to become worthless. If it really is not worthless, you can do it in a few minutes, but prove it's not worthless. And, you know, other people, whether it's an employee investing their time or an investor investing their money, they want to see you make good decisions with money. And if you burn money early on business cards that nobody wants, or a ping pong table, if you got a free ping pong table, knock yourself out. Who cares? Ping pong's not evil. But if you have $5,000 and you went and spent $1,000 on a ping pong table, prepare to be judged, right? I mean, if you run out of money and need more money from investors, they're going to be like, "What'd you do with it?" And if you say, "Well, we did 4,000 on market testing and 1,000 on a ping pong table," it's going to be like, "Okay, well, I don't really want you spending 20% of my money on stuff you don't need. Thanks, no." And because they see a lot of deals, right? And so I think that's part of it. And I think what you need to do, what you do too early, that's the kind of stuff I see them doing too early with legal.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, and I'm right there with you. I mean, I preach, like, hey, if money is an issue, do not spend your money on a trademark application, because you most likely, I mean, right now it's taking 10, 11 months to even be officially registered, and by the time you're registered, you may have already pivoted. And so I do teach to do the search, make sure that you're not infringing on somebody, but you don't necessarily have to file the application. And I tell people when they have that momentum. So I tell people, like, when you're testing, do the search, don't necessarily file the application. But once you have momentum and you know, hey, this is a thing, I'm not testing, that's when you need to file the application.
And don't you think you can explore a legal, not opinion, not capital O opinion, but you can get a lawyer's pulse on things and get a sense of, do you like this lawyer to help me pretty inexpensively, but maybe free if you ask early enough and you're honest about, look, we're probably not doing this yet. My sense is,
and people come to me all the time, and I'll tell them, hey, I really don't think your money's spent. You need to spend money on an application. If you want a very thorough search, I think the money should be spent there. But otherwise, like, wait on the application.
And I think most of the, all the time I work with entrepreneurs and say, go talk to an IP lawyer to see if there's IP value here in some way. Because you may design the product in a way that they may coach you that there's a better way to do it and you can protect something. That doesn't mean you're starting the clock on $20,000 of legal bills. That means the lawyer might tell you, no, that would be a waste of time, and now you can just design your product. Or they might say, yes, if you consider XYZ, then you might get some valuable protection, in which case maybe you raise $20,000 more, right? Maybe that becomes a priority. But I think you can't know the answer until you do the exploration, and the exploration, in my opinion, is almost always free, because most of the lawyers with startups know it's worth it to me to give a little time early, really cheap or free, because I just want to work with you later and I don't want you to have screwed the whole thing up.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. No, I'm right there with you. Okay, so before we wrap up, I got to hear, and I know everybody here wants to hear, your number one business tip. I know this is going to be good.
Wow, it's a lot of pressure.
So I'm putting the pressure on Damon. Don't let us down here. You've been at this for a while, so please, what is your number one business tip?
I've been at it a while, and it's not been my number one business tip for a while. Although I think I've instinctively, it's been in there. I couldn't articulate it. It's you're doing something hard, whether it's a small business or a startup. You're doing something hard. You're doing something with a high rate of failure. You're doing something that's very lonely. And to most of the world looks incredibly risky. And there are these, cartoonish and sometimes real life entrepreneurs that are the swashbucklers with the crazy risk and the fancy clothes or whatever. But for the most part, there are a lot of people, I would say the lion's share of people that have been successful, they de-risk. They take something that's inherently risky, that's really hard, they want to go really fast, and they de-risk it. And it's sometimes as simple as, let's talk to the lawyer. Let's talk to 3 lawyers and ask them these questions about IP
before we even raise money that we might use for that. Let's ask the customer to buy a thing before we have a thing. And that's not a dishonest conversation. That's, but that's a clever conversation, right? I mean, if Fortune 500 companies can put a weighted fake pizza box in a brand name national grocery store, which they routinely do, and have you show up at the front counter trying to buy this pizza you've never heard of, and the grocery store say, "Oh, sorry, that was a test. Here's a coupon for something. Sorry for the inconvenience. What else can we do to make you happy?" That's a company with billions and billions and billions of dollars to incinerate, not taking a risk, right? They're de-risking something. They're testing something for free. They literally never made the pizza. And why shouldn't you do that? Somebody with no money, right? Shouldn't, you're doing it with your business, right? I mean, you've created a hardship for yourself in that you're juggling two things, but you said it, right? You've got some stability, some referral, some credibility, and some income, and you're trading, right? You're trading extra energy, and you've de-risked it, right? You can afford a mistake. You can afford when the whole funding market, turns down on the new business, you can take that punch better than a whole bunch of your competitors because you've got this. If you went to a venture capitalist day one, they would have said, "Got to get rid of this other thing." I don't know if you ever heard it, but that's going to slow you down. You need to dump that and do this. And they're telling you what you have to do to be attractive to them. But what you did is say, that feels risky. I'm going to do it this way. And I think I can grow into that. And I can always get rid of this later, but I'm going to hang on to it now. And I think most of the victories go to the people that think sometimes I got to take a leap, but a lot of times I can just take a step. I think that's de-risk without sacrificing forward movement or quality. And that's my tip.
I like it. Well, Damon, thank you so much for joining us today. And can you please let everybody know how they can get in contact with you?
I often refer to founders and startups, but to me, if you're doing something or trying to do something, small business, lemonade stand, whatever, if you're making the effort and trying to do something cool, you never know one turns into the other all the time. Twitter at Damon DeVito, DamonDevito. That's where I try to have those conversations. I keep my DMs open. If you tag me in something and ask a question, I try to, with the limits of time and my poor organizational skills, I try to chime in. But that's where I am, at Damon DeVito on Twitter.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Sure. Take care. Thank you.
Here at Legalpreneur, we're committed to providing a supportive legal community for all business owners. I know how scary the legal stuff can be. If you found this information helpful, I would be so grateful if you could share it with a fellow business owner. And quite frankly, it doesn't cost anything to rate, review, or subscribe to the show. Your support helps me reach more listeners, which allows me to support more business owners in their entrepreneurial journey. Have any questions or comments about the show? Feel free to drop me a line on Instagram. I promise I read all of the messages and comments. And if you want to be a guest on the show or know someone that would make a great guest, simply fill out our application form and a team member will reach out if we think it's a good fit. I'll see you in the next episode.